to say. As a result, I'm going to be saying it all summer long, that the top priority around here is left-handed defense. What's not as easy to say is that you really should take a look at your own people first. Good morning to you. Good Friday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Daily Shot of Penguins. It comes your way bright and early every weekday if you're into football and or baseball. I also offer daily shots of Steelers and Pirates in the same place that you found this. The Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins will be taking on the Lehigh Valley Phantoms in Game 2 of their Calder Cup first round best of 3 playoff series. That's tonight in Allentown, PA. The Phantoms won the first one rather easily, somewhat disturbing. And as a result, the Penguins are already on the edge of elimination. Now, there aren't a whole lot of left-handed defense answers there either. Owen Pickering, first-round pick, absolutely will be one of those. He better be one of those. But after that, the only guy who's signed for next season who really even register a blip on the radar is Ryan Shea. And I don't mean to be disrespectful here, but I would think of Shea as more of a depth piece, more of a Chad Ruhwedel type. And that, that doesn't leave you a whole heck of a lot, does it? So here again, the convenient thing to put forth is that Kyle Dubas should take any and all available cap space and put it into that position, that side of that position this summer. But that also doesn't exactly come without issues, at least not if you're working with Dubas's own parameters. He himself said just last week that he would prefer, if he's going to make big money type signings, he would do it with players who are closer to their mid-20s or early 20s than he would with guys around, age 30, 31, which is always the bulk of any unrestricted free agency class. So you want to be somewhat guarded about how you spend the money. You don't want to throw it away on expiring contracts for old guys, or even if the guys aren't old, but they'll be old by the time you expect to be good. It all kind of lines up the same way, which is badly. And that brings me to Matt Grzelcyk. Grzelcyk on this particular program has been something of a polarizing concept. And the reason for that is that over his first 20 games or so, he was terrible. Not bad, not very bad, flat out terrible. I couldn't understand, couldn't even conceive of why he was continuing to suit up game after game after game. Well, he ended up his season. And first off, logged all 82 games. Always hats off to anybody who can do that. With a goal and 39 assists, along with a -6 rating, which actually was one of the better ones on this team that got hit as hard as it did defensively, especially early on. He became, over time, dependable enough and at times dynamic enough that he took over the top power play, pushed both Erik Karlsson and Chris Letang, something that would have been unthinkable going into the season, off the top unit. What's more, he became, I don't know if I'd say steady defensively, but he wasn't hurting you anymore defensively. When he was on the ice in the early going, as in through Thanksgiving, to throw an advanced analytic at you, the Penguins controlled 31.2.5% of all the goals that were scored at 5-on-5. That is not good, because it means the other guys are scoring 68.75% of all the goals at 5-on-5. Now, after that, this is night and day. The Penguins controlled 54.64% of all the 5-on-5 goals whenever Grzelcyk was on the rink. And that was the best of all of the defensemen who were here for the full season. And I'll remind that he was paired, and this should be a positive, but it wasn't necessarily, with Karlsson or Letang pretty much throughout, and neither of those two gentlemen were at their best all season. Also in relative, he was the best power play guy, not because the coaches said so, but because the numbers say so. The power play scored an average of 9.86 goals per 60 minutes when he was on it, versus 8.99 for Karlsson, 8.00 for Letang. So the do you keep him, do you let him walk away conversation isn't really all that cut and dried. Certainly not the way it would have been after the season's opening quarter. But let's take it further. He's 30 now, so he'll be 31 then. Not ideal. Not exactly a fit for what Dubas described. But would he be expensive? See, when he was with the Bruins, he was roughly a $4 million a year player. Then he didn't finish well with the Bruins, came here, took a 1 year, prove it, bring yourself back kind of deal for $2.75 million. Well, from what I've heard from the inside, he believes that he has proved it and he would prefer to have a longer term contract. Now, he can do that by going out on the open market. Can he do that in Pittsburgh, and is it smart for Pittsburgh? In other words, let's say he wants to set himself up with one of those 4-year deals like he had in Boston. Is that commitment something that makes sense? Is he someone that you can count on, not just now, but again, when the team is good? And if you say, well, he'd at least be a nice spare part to have, okay, but do you want to be paying $4 million or whatever for a spare part when you're supposed to be good? Here's the only part of this that's certain. Grzelcyk would be open to coming back. He said so at the locker cleanout last week.
I would love to be here. I think the way that the guys have welcomed me and made me feel welcome right away, I'm really grateful for that. And just the people in the organization are unbelievable. Something a lot of people have talked about it who have been here previously, and it's certainly true. And
interesting. I know people aren't generally into takes that are shades of gray, but the closest I can come to manufacturing any take on this is that I have no idea what I would do. When we come back, J1Q. This episode is brought to you by Bet Online, your number one source for all your summer sports needs this season, from Major League Baseball, golf, NHL, NBA playoffs. Get the latest odds and lines, including all team matchups, player props, odds on just about everything that's out there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Bet Online, where the game starts. Today's J1Q comes from Travis, and it's about those Calder Cup playoffs that I mentioned will be continuing tonight in Allentown, PA, between Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, and Lehigh Valley. Travis says, DK, this isn't rocket science. Sergei Murashov and Philip Larson led the Penguins with lights-out goaltending for half the season. And for some reason, they went into this game, game one, with Taylor Gauthier and Yoel Blomqvist. Gauthier is a solid goaltender, but Yoel just does not show up in big moments. It's glaringly obvious. No one wants to say it. He screams bust. He's just a career backup / starter in the minors. I don't know how much more proof this organization needs to see from Murashov, but it's becoming highly frustrating. Why is Murashov here in Wheeling right now? That's ridiculous. Well, the correct answer to your question now, Travis, as opposed to when you actually sent this to me, is that Murashov isn't in Wheeling. Murashov's in Allentown because Blomqvist was hurt in game one. Now, that does not mean that Murashov's going to get the start, because if we're calling all of this like it is, and I can appreciate your passion and your frustration, both of them, the reality is that Murashov hasn't been really very good either of late. In fact, this has probably been some of his worst hockey since he's come to North America. Now, I say that without any kind of knock on him because he's playing a ton compared to what he did in Russia. He's never gone through anything close to this kind of a grind, and it should actually be expected, like fully and reasonably expected, that he would wear down at some stage. Now, is the same true for Blomqvist? I don't know. Blomqvist's obviously been over here longer. But here's what I do know, and I'm not going to sit here and play goaltending expert or anything of that nature. I am going to say that we are talking about two very young, very skinny kids. This is my in-depth analysis, okay? They don't have weight to lose, and yet they lose weight, a lot of it, not just over the course of a game. You hear about that all the time, but over the course of a season. And it does impact you. I remember having this conversation with Matt Murray, who, of course, was right around this same age whenever Muzz was winning Stanley Cups in Pittsburgh, but he struggled with it. Muzz was, and is to this day, a really naturally skinny dude. He didn't grow out of it. Some do, some don't. I know that for whatever reason, a lot of the European goaltenders, in particular the Russian goaltenders, when they come over here are like that. That's how Sergei Bobrovsky was. That's even how Andrei Vasilevsky was, which is hard to imagine considering he's just become this giant. And it can take time. I am not going to take any issue with any of the things you bring up about who's playing where, who's playing against whom, who is good or bad in bigger situations. If you're in Wheeling, and it sounds like you are, you're seeing a lot more of these guys than I am. But I will say this, making hard pronouncements about them when they're not even fully formed physically, that's not going to work out for you, Travis, in the long run. It's just not. The greatest transformations I've seen in mid-career for NHL goaltenders, including Marc-Andre Fleury, came whenever they began actually filling out a little bit. When Flower was drafted, I went up to his home in Sorel-Tracy, Quebec, to spend time with him and his family. The only thing I kept thinking the entire time was, how is this skinny kid going to do anything in the NHL? Well, of course, the Penguins ended up using him as an 18-year-old. He had all that flexibility and competitive fire, but you'll also remember that he, too, would wear down as the season would go longer until he didn't. So a little bit of patience, I think, is in order here. I appreciate the question, Travis. I appreciate everybody listening to Daily Shot of Penguins, and we're going to come back with another one of these on Monday. Don't forget, this show does not stop just because the hockey does. We keep going year-round.